Madison Carter had never felt death this close before. Deep in the Oregon wilderness, enemy soldiers were just 200 meters away, and the last bullet in her rifle had already been fired. She held her breath. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Just then, a voice came from behind her. "Take this." When she turned around, legendary SEAL sniper Jake Morrison was extending his specialized rifle toward her. This was the most critical moment of her life, but no one yet knew what Madison could do with that weapon. Madison Carter, 28 years old, had spent 6 years being invisible at Fort Bragg. Standing 5 feet 6 inches with auburn hair, always pulled back in regulation style, she moved through the base like a shadow nobody noticed. The other soldiers had nicknamed her Radio Girl, and it stuck. Always fixing communication equipment, updating radio frequencies, coordinating between units with quiet efficiency, but never stepping into the spotlight, never asking for recognition. What nobody knew about Madison was her sacred morning ritual. The mission that would change everything began on a rain-soaked Tuesday morning in October. Intelligence reports had identified a terrorist cell called the Iron Brotherhood, operating in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon, 60 miles northeast of Portland. The group had been linked to attacks on federal installations, and intelligence suggested they were planning something catastrophic for Veterans Day weekend. Madison's assigned role was exactly what she expected: establish and maintain communication between the assault team and command headquarters. She would remain at the rear with the command post, monitor radio frequencies, relay intelligence updates. It was critically important, but relatively safe behind established lines, away from direct enemy contact. The assault team consisted of 8 elite operators, 4 Navy SEALs, 2 Army Rangers, and 2 Delta Force specialists. Each man was a veteran with multiple combat deployments. This was supposed to be routine. Leading the SEAL contingent was Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison, a living legend in the special operations community. Morrison, 34 years old, had been operating behind enemy lines for over 12 years. His confirmed kill count was classified, but rumors put it well over 200. More importantly, Morrison had never lost a team member under his direct command. Morrison stood 6 feet 2, built like a professional boxer, with graying temples that spoke to years of high-stress operations. His eyes were the color of winter storms, and when he looked at you, it felt like he was reading your entire life story. He carried a customized Barrett M82A 1.50 caliber sniper rifle that he'd personally modified over years of field work. The weapon was his signature, as recognizable as his call sign, Long Shot. The mission plan appeared straightforward: helicopter insertion at dawn, establish overwatch positions, conduct reconnaissance, then systematically eliminate the terrorist cell. Intelligence estimates suggested 12 to 15 enemy combatants, reasonably well armed but not military trained. Madison rode in the second helicopter with communications equipment and medical supplies. As they flew over dense Oregon forest, she methodically checked her radio systems. The terrain below was challenging: thick canopy cover, steep ravines, limited visibility. The operation began falling apart within the first hour. The terrorists weren't the disorganized militia group that intelligence had described. They were disciplined, well-equipped, professionally trained soldiers who had been expecting this assault. This was a trap, carefully planned and perfectly executed. The first helicopter, carrying Morrison and 3 other SEALs, took devastating automatic weapons fire immediately upon insertion. Muzzle flashes erupted from multiple concealed positions that intelligence had completely missed. The pilot was forced to execute an emergency landing 800 meters from their intended insertion point. The second helicopter was forced to abort their primary landing zone due to concentrated enemy fire that included heavy machine guns and possibly rocket-propelled grenades. They executed an emergency insertion almost 2 kilometers from the objective. Madison found herself separated from the main assault force with Army Ranger Sergeant First Class David Kim. Kim was a solid soldier with 2 previous combat deployments, but he was bleeding from multiple shrapnel wounds from debris during the chaotic helicopter insertion. Their position was rapidly being surrounded by enemy forces who seemed to know exactly where every American soldier had landed. Through her radio headset, Madison could hear chaos unfolding across the operational area. Morrison's voice came through, calm despite desperate circumstances. "Command, Longshot. We are in heavy contact with enemy forces. Initial intelligence was severely flawed. Enemy forces are significantly larger than anticipated and extremely well positioned. Current estimate 40 to 50 hostile combatants with military-grade equipment." The response from command was filled with static. "Longshot, command, reinforcements are being mobilized, but estimated time of arrival is 4 hours minimum. Can you maintain your current position?" Morrison's response was grim. "Negative, command. Current positions are not sustainable. We're going to have to move to more defensible terrain." "Radio girl, what's your current status?" Madison keyed her microphone quietly. "Longshot, radio girl. Currently with Wounded Ranger Kim, approximately 1,200 meters south-southwest of your position. Kim has sustained shrapnel wounds but remains mobile. We have detected significant enemy movement around our position." What Madison didn't tell Morrison was that she could already see enemy soldiers moving through the forest below, at least 20, conducting a systematic sweep pattern toward their location with military precision. For the next 3 hours, Madison and Kim played a deadly game of cat and mouse through the dense Oregon wilderness. The enemy forces were conducting a methodical search using proper military tactics and coordination that spoke to extensive training. These weren't weekend warriors. These were trained professionals. Kim's wounds were progressively worsening despite Madison's field treatment, and he was beginning to slow their movement significantly. More concerning, their ammunition was running dangerously low. Kim had started with 210 rounds for his M4 carbine. Madison had 120 rounds. Between firefights and movement, they were down to less than 40 rounds combined. Through her radio, Madison could monitor Morrison's team dealing with their own escalating problems. They had managed to eliminate several enemy positions using superior marksmanship, but they were also running critically low on ammunition and had taken casualties. The enemy had every advantage: superior numbers, knowledge of terrain, prepared positions, and unlimited ammunition. "Radio girl," Morrison's voice crackled with urgency. "Can you reach grid coordinates 847392? Intelligence indicates there's a pre-positioned supply cache there." Madison checked her map. The cache point was over 2 kilometers away, across a valley crawling with enemy forces. "Negative, Longshot. Too much enemy activity between our position and that location." "Copy. Keep moving north along the ridgeline. We'll attempt to create a diversion." Distant explosions began echoing through the forest as Morrison's team used their remaining grenades to create chaos, hoping to draw enemy attention away from Madison's position. The tactic worked partially. Madison could observe several groups of enemy soldiers moving toward the sounds of battle, but not all of them. At least one squad continued their methodical sweep directly toward Madison and Kim's concealed position. Madison helped Kim move through dense pine trees, staying low and moving quietly. Kim was getting weaker, his face pale and clammy with shock setting in from blood loss. They needed a defensible position soon. They found their best option: a small natural depression surrounded by large granite boulders and fallen trees, providing good fields of fire in 3 directions and a steep slope behind them. Kim collapsed against one of the boulders, breathing heavily. Madison checked his wounds. The bleeding had slowed thanks to her field dressings, but his skin was growing pale. "How many rounds do you have left?" Madison asked quietly. Kim checked his magazine with trembling hands. 12 rounds in the rifle, plus 1 full magazine for my sidearm." "You?" Madison conducted her ammunition count. 15 rounds remaining for the rifle, plus 2 magazines for my pistol." That's when they heard voices approaching, enemy soldiers speaking in English but with various accents: European, Middle Eastern, Russian. They were conducting a coordinated search pattern with military precision, getting systematically closer. Madison whispered into her radio, Long shot, radio girl. We're in a defensive position at grid coordinates 851396. Multiple enemy forces approaching from at least 3 directions. Request immediate support. Morrison's strained response. Radio girl, we're currently pinned down by heavy enemy fire. Cannot provide direct support. You and Kim are going to have to handle this yourselves. Kim looked at Madison with pain-filled eyes. You know what this means, right? We're not walking out of this one alive. Madison performed a final check of her rifle, ensuring a round was chambered. Through the trees she could see movement, enemy soldiers advancing in professional tactical formation, methodically checking every potential hiding spot. Maybe not, Madison said quietly, but we're not going down without making them pay. The first enemy soldier appeared at exactly 200 meters, a bearded man in tactical gear carrying an AK-74. He was moving carefully, weapon ready, systematically scanning for targets. Madison controlled her breathing exactly like her father had taught her, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let your heart rate settle. Find that perfect moment of stillness between heartbeats. She squeezed the trigger smoothly, and the enemy soldier dropped silently. The forest erupted into chaos. Automatic weapons fire shredded the air around their position. Bullets sparked off granite rocks and sent wood splinters flying. Madison and Kim returned fire, trying to make every round count. Madison's training kicked in automatically. She wasn't shooting wildly. She was carefully picking targets, calculating ranges, making measured shots that her father would have been proud of. "Contact left!" Kim shouted, engaging enemies from that direction. Madison shifted right, targeting 2 soldiers attempting to flank their position. For 10 intensive minutes, they held their defensive position against overwhelming odds. Madison's shooting was extraordinary. Every round found its mark, forcing enemy soldiers to seek better cover. But there were too many hostiles, and ammunition was running out. "I'm down to 6 rounds!" Kim called out, blood seeping through his bandages. Madison checked her status. 4 rounds left in the rifle, plus my sidearm. Morrison's voice through the radio. "Radio girl, what's your tactical status?" "Heavy contact with multiple enemy forces. Running critically low on ammunition. Hold your position. We're attempting to reach you." But Madison could see additional enemy soldiers moving through the forest in coordinated movements. They were being surrounded, and Morrison couldn't fight through all the hostile forces between them. Kim took a bullet through the chest while Madison was reloading. She caught him as he fell, bright red blood spreading across his uniform, breathing becoming shallow. "Kim, stay with me." He looked up with fading eyes. "Madison, take my remaining ammunition." He pressed his final magazine into her hands. "Make every shot count. Make them remember us." Madison loaded Kim's magazine, 18 more rounds. Through her position, she could count at least 12 enemy soldiers advancing from multiple directions. The math was brutal. Insufficient ammunition, too many targets, nowhere to retreat. She keyed her radio. "Long shot, radio girl. Kim is down and critically wounded. Almost out of ammunition. Enemy forces overrunning our position." Morrison's desperate response. "Radio girl, I'm coming for you right now. Hold your position. Negative long shot, too many hostiles between us. Complete the primary mission." "Madison, that's not happening. You're coming home with us." First time he'd used her actual name instead of call sign. But she could assess the tactical situation. Any rescue attempt would likely kill Morrison too, and the mission would fail. Madison took careful aim at the nearest enemy soldier and fired. Perfect hit, 17 rounds remaining. She shifted targets, fired again, 16 left, but they kept advancing, closing the distance, 150 meters, 140, 130. What happened next would become legend in special operations communities. Through the dense forest, moving like a supernatural predator, came Jake Morrison. But he wasn't running desperately. He was systematically hunting toward them, methodically eliminating enemy soldiers with precision shooting that bordered on supernatural. Madison could hear his distinctive rifle, the unmistakable crack of his Barrett M82A1, as he took out enemies at impossible ranges. One shot, one kill, over and over. The enemy forces advancing on Madison suddenly found themselves being picked off from behind by a sniper who appeared and disappeared like smoke. Morrison was providing covering fire while drawing closer. Madison could track his progress by his rifle shots and falling soldiers. 600 meters, 500, 400, each shot brought him closer while eliminating threats. But Madison was down to her final rifle rounds, and enemies were still approaching from the front. 120 meters, 110, 100. She fired her last rifle round at a soldier preparing to throw a grenade. Her shot took him center mass, but his finger had pulled the pin. The grenade landed 30 feet away. Madison threw herself over Kim as the explosion shook the ground. Dirt and debris rained down, her ears ringing from the blast. Through the smoke, she saw enemy soldiers advancing. 80 meters, 70. She drew her sidearm, Beretta M9 with 2 magazines, 30 rounds total against at least 8 professional soldiers with automatic weapons. The math had become impossible. Madison had never felt death this close. Enemy soldiers were now 200 meters away and closing. Her rifle was empty, and she could hear her heartbeat pounding. 30 pistol rounds against 8 professional soldiers with automatic weapons. It wasn't enough. Just then, a familiar voice from behind. "Take this." She turned. Jake Morrison was extending his Barrett M82A1 toward her. His tactical vest was torn, blood stained his left sleeve, but his winter storm eyes were focused and determined. "Morrison, what are you doing here? How did you get through all those enemies?" "Couldn't let Radio Girl have all the fun," he said, voice strained. Madison could see his left shoulder was badly wounded, a through-and-through gunshot that would limit his mobility. "I can't operate this system." "I'm not trained on the Barrett." Morrison looked at her with an unreadable expression. "Madison Carter, daughter of Colonel Marcus Ghost Carter, 3rd Special Forces Group. Yeah, I knew your father. And I know about those 0500 training sessions you think nobody notices." Madison's eyes widened in shock. Morrison knew about her secret training, about her father's instruction, about the skills she'd been hiding. "You're shooting today," Morrison continued, pressing the Barrett into her hands. "That wasn't standard communications training. Those were precision shots under combat stress. Your father taught you well." Madison felt the weight of the Barrett M82A1, 29 pounds of engineered death. The rifle was equipped with a Leupold 10-time scope, bipod legs, and a muzzle brake. This wasn't a hiding weapon. It was designed for a battlefield domination. I don't know if I can handle this." "Madison," Morrison said with command authority, "those soldiers are 200 meters away and closing. In 3 minutes, they'll be close enough for grenades. Kim needs medical attention he won't get unless those hostiles are neutralized. This rifle has 8 rounds in the magazine, and you're the only person who can make them count." Through the forest, Madison could hear enemy voices coordinating their final assault. The hostile forces knew they had the Americans trapped and were organizing the perfect killing attack. Morrison handed her 2 additional magazines. "Your father once told me you had an extraordinary gift for precision shooting. He said when the moment came, you'd step up and do what needed to be done. Madison, that moment is right here, right now." Madison positioned the Barrett on its bipod, settling into proper shooting stance. The weapon felt different, heavier, more powerful, but somehow familiar. Her father had shown her photographs of Barrett rifles, explained their capabilities, but she'd never fired one. Through the crystal-clear scope, she could see the enemy soldiers with perfect clarity. They were advancing in disciplined tactical formation, using proper cover and movement techniques that demonstrated extensive military training. Professional soldiers, probably experienced mercenaries, dangerous, disciplined, and determined. Madison controlled her breathing, feeling her heartbeat slow to the rhythm her father had drilled into her. "Remember, sweetheart," his voice echoed in her memory, "the rifle is just a tool. The real weapon is your mind. Calculate distance, account for wind, understand target movement, and trust your training." The lead enemy soldier was approximately 180 meters away, advancing from tree to tree. Madison could see him clearly. Tactical vest, assault rifle, determined expression. He was the squad leader, coordinating the advance through hand signals. Madison exhaled half her breath and held it steady. The crosshairs settled perfectly on the soldier's chest center. She squeezed the trigger smoothly, exactly like her father had taught her during thousands of practice sessions. The Barrett M82 A1 roared like thunder. The massive .50 caliber bullet traveled at 2,800 feet per second, crossing the distance in less than a quarter second. The enemy squad leader simply ceased to exist. There one moment, completely gone the next. The distinctive Barrett sound brought immediate terrified responses from remaining enemies. They recognized that unmistakable sound. A .50 caliber precision rifle meant death at distances they couldn't imagine defending against. Several soldiers immediately began falling back desperately toward better cover, but Madison was already acquiring her next target with deadly precision. What unfolded over the next 4 minutes would become absolute legend in military circles. Madison Carter, the quiet communication specialist who had spent 6 years being invisible, transformed into something else entirely, something her father had always known she could become. The second enemy soldier was desperately trying to reach cover behind a boulder. Madison smoothly tracked his movement, led the target for his speed, and fired. The .50 caliber round punched through his body armor like tissue paper. The third soldier made the fatal error of trying to return fire with his AK-74. Madison could see his muzzle flash through her scope, instantly pinpointed his location, and ended his participation with a single shot. By now, remaining enemy soldiers were in complete chaos. They faced a precision sniper with a weapon that could eliminate them at ranges where they couldn't even see their target clearly, operated by someone making seemingly impossible shots. Some attempted to flee entirely, others desperately sought better cover. Madison systematically eliminated 2 more soldiers, attempting a flanking maneuver through a drainage gully. Her shots were precise, professional, and absolutely final. The Barrett's massive rounds didn't wound, they ended threats permanently. Morrison, despite his shoulder wound, called out additional targets. Madison, 2 hostiles at your 2 o'clock, approximately 200 meters behind the fallen log. Madison shifted aim smoothly, located both targets through her scope, and fired twice in rapid succession. Both enemy soldiers dropped immediately. Outstanding shooting, Morrison said quietly. Your father would be incredibly proud. Through her scope, Madison could observe the remaining enemy soldiers, the last survivors, attempting to retreat rapidly through the forest. They were running in panic, abandoning their mission, abandoning equipment, simply trying to escape the nightmare they'd encountered. Madison had exactly 1 round remaining in her magazine. She could let them escape, let them disappear into the forest. It would be merciful. But these soldiers had shot Kim, tried to kill Morrison, were part of a terrorist organization planning Veterans Day attacks that could kill hundreds of innocent Americans. Her father's voice whispered clearly, Sometimes, sweetheart, true mercy isn't about letting someone escape. Sometimes mercy is ensuring they can never hurt anyone else again. Madison chambered her final round, located the rear guard soldier in her scope, and fired her 8th shot. Perfect silence returned to the Oregon forest. The forest fell into complete silence, except for ringing in Madison's ears from the Barrett's concussive blasts. She had fired exactly 8 rounds and eliminated 8 enemy soldiers at ranges between 120 and 220 meters. Every shot had been absolutely perfect. Morrison was already moving despite his wounds, checking Kim's vitals and calling for medical evacuation. Command Longshot. Immediate medical evacuation required at grid coordinates 851396. 1 urgent surgical case, 1 priority. Kim was still alive, though barely. Madison assisted with emergency treatment, applying fresh dressings and preparing an IV line. Her hands remained rock steady, the same precision that had guided her shooting now focused on saving a life. How did you know? Madison asked quietly while working on Kim's wounds. About my father, about our training sessions? Morrison smiled grimly. Your father and I served together in Afghanistan back in 2018. He showed me a photograph of you at a shooting competition when you were 16. He was so proud. He also told me that if anything ever happened to him, there was a remarkable young woman who would carry on his legacy. but she would need exactly the right moment to step forward. Madison's hands paused. He never told me you knew him personally. Marcus was intensely private, but he understood that someday someone might need to recognize his daughter for who she really was. He asked me to watch out for you if our paths ever crossed. The sound of approaching helicopters interrupted their conversation. Medical evacuation was inbound, along with reinforcements to secure the area. Morrison stood carefully, favoring his wounded shoulder. Madison, what you accomplished today, that wasn't luck or adrenaline. That was years of dedicated training combined with natural talent coming together at exactly the right moment. Madison looked at the Barrett lying beside her. 8 shots fired, 8 enemy soldiers eliminated, not a single round wasted. It was the kind of precision shooting that created legends, but she didn't feel legendary. She felt tired, emotionally drained, and strangely empty. I never wanted to use those skills in combat, she said quietly. I know, Morrison replied with understanding, but sometimes we don't get to choose when we're needed most. Sometimes the moment chooses us and we have to be ready. 3 weeks later, Madison stood in the Pentagon wearing her dress uniform, feeling completely out of place. The military bureaucracy had processed all after-action reports, and now she was here for a recognition ceremony. Kim had survived and was recovering at Walter Reed. The terrorist cell had been eliminated, and intelligence recovered revealed detailed Veterans Day attack plans that would have killed hundreds. The operation had ultimately been deemed a complete strategic success. Morrison was present, his left arm in a sling. Also present were several high-ranking officers, including a general with more stars than Madison had ever seen. Sergeant Madison Carter, the general began, please step forward. Despite everything, she still felt like the quiet communications specialist who wanted to remain invisible. Sergeant Carter, your actions during Operation Timberwolf were extraordinary. Under intense enemy fire, with limited ammunition and wounded teammates, you employed an unfamiliar weapon system to engage and eliminate 8 enemy combatants at ranges exceeding 200 meters. Your marksmanship was flawless, your tactical decisions sound, and your actions directly saved your teammates while preventing a significant terrorist attack. The general paused. When Chief Morrison offered you his primary weapon, you didn't hesitate to accept responsibility far beyond your assigned role. You stepped forward when your country needed you. Morrison moved beside Madison, removing something from a presentation case. Madison, this belonged to your father. He carried it through 3 combat deployments and always said it would belong to someone who earned it through actions, not words. In Morrison's hands was a silver shooting badge, unlike anything Madison had ever seen. Her father's expert marksman badge, but modified with additional elements, a sniper's scope, crossed rifles, and an inscription, "For C. Carter, when the moment comes, you'll know what to do. M. Carter." Quote, your father had this made before his final deployment, quote, Morrison explained. He said someday, when you had proven to yourself what you were capable of, this badge would find you. Madison accepted the badge with trembling hands. Her father had known this day would come. Additionally, the general continued, you're being recommended for immediate reassignment to the Army Marksmanship Unit at Fort Benning for advanced sniper training and instructor duties. Your talents have been recognized, Sergeant Carter. 6 months later, Madison stood on the sniper range at Fort Benning, teaching advanced marksmanship to soldiers who looked at her with respect and amazement. She wore her father's badge now, along with new decorations earned through advanced training. More importantly, she wore the quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she was capable of. Morrison had visited the week before, fully recovered. They had stood on this same range where she put 5 consecutive rounds through the same hole at 300 meters, using the Barrett now permanently assigned to her. Your father was right, Morrison had said. You had a gift. But more than that, you had the character to use it when it mattered most. Madison had smiled, remembering the Oregon wilderness morning when everything changed. I never properly thanked you for trusting me with your rifle that day. Madison, Morrison had replied. That rifle found exactly the person it was supposed to find. Your father would have been proud. Now, watching her students attempt precision shots at distant targets, Madison thought about her journey. She had spent years hiding her abilities, staying quiet, being invisible. But when the moment came, Kim bleeding, enemies advancing, Morrison handing her the Barrett, she had stepped forward. She had become who her father always knew she could become. A young corporal approached hesitantly. Sergeant Carter, I don't think I can make this shot. The target's too far, wind's too strong, I'm not good enough. Madison looked at the soldier and smiled, hearing echoes of her father's voice. Corporal, shooting isn't about distance or wind. It's about everything before you pull the trigger. The breathing, the heartbeat, the moment of perfect stillness between thoughts. Master that, and you can master anything. The corporal nodded seriously and returned to position. Madison watched as the young soldier settled into form, controlled breathing, and found that perfect stillness. The shot cracked across the range. Madison smiled, seeing the hit through her spotting scope. Another perfect center shot, another soldier learning their true capabilities. Madison Carter had found her place in the world, no longer the invisible communications specialist, no longer the quiet soldier in the shadows. She was the sniper's daughter, carrying forward her father's legacy, teaching others to step forward when their moments came. And somewhere in the Oregon wilderness, 8 enemy soldiers had learned that sometimes the quietest warriors carry the most dangerous gifts. Sometimes, when the moment comes, you know exactly what to do. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.